Yo, what's going on, fam out there? It's your boy Tahir Johnson, and we're back with another super special episode of the Cannabis Diversity Report. Today, I have Niambe Mcintosh, the founder of the Peter Tosh Foundation, daughter of the legendary reggae singer Peter Tosh, and criminal justice reform activist. I'm so happy to have you on the show today, talking about your background. How you doing?
Thank you. It's definitely a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much. I'm doing well.
Absolutely. So again, so thankful to have you on. You're the daughter of the youngest of 9 children, correct? Of Peter Tosh.
Yeah, the youngest of 10, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique upbringing. And I was born in Jamaica, but raised in Boston, Massachusetts. So only really grew up with one brother, which we'll talk more about, but definitely still close to all of my other siblings.
Right. And so coming from the family, do you do any music or entertainment or anything like that? Does it run in the family?
Well, the singing gene definitely didn't come to me, but the love of music is definitely there. Grew up loving music just all around, actually listening to a lot of hip hop, being raised in Boston. And then once I became a teenager, I DJ'd for a few years.
Nice.
And that's when I got it. I had a sound system, is what we call it in Jamaica. So DJ'd for some years and played in different places. So I've always had the love of music, but I guess if I was singing, I wouldn't be really running the carrying on kind of the legacy in the way that I do now. Um,
Yeah, I hear you. And even though you grew up in Boston, like being from and having family from Jamaica, what's cannabis culture like? What is it? What does cannabis really mean to you?
well, cannabis is definitely part of the fabric of my family, really on both sides. We recognize ourselves as followers of Rastafari and hold the plant to be a sacrament. And so, people often ask, um, who smokes in your family or who consumes, but the reality for my family, you got to ask who doesn't. you know.
Right.
And I have a large family, both on my maternal side and my paternal side.
Right. And talk a little bit about the Peter Tosh Foundation. What are some of the things that you're doing to uphold your father's legacy?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of the Peter Tosh Foundation, and I am the director of the legacy and brand. So there's two different capacities there. But as far as I'll speak about the kind of the legacy part first, and then go into the foundation. Um, Being the head of the legacy, I've taken over my dad's estate about 10 years ago. It was run by a public administrator, and so that's really controlling the name, the image, the likeness, and looking for any opportunity to have his message, impart wisdom, however we can. Working on a major motion movie, a theatrical play, and we're constantly looking for and working on new and creative merchandising ideas. But we understand the brand is really limitless.
Here's your reminder.
Oops.
Drink a bottle of
It's all good.
Be quiet.
Still the pandemic, so there's stuff going on, dogs barking, kids running there,
Alexa, put in your reminder
all that stuff.
to drink water. And so that's pretty much what I do in that capacity. So my day, I'm spending days just on the phone all the time. But then we, as the family, we recognize that my father's music was more than just music. It was really to uplift and educate and inspire people. Let me unplug Alexa here, because she apparently got a lot to say. It was really, his music was really to uplift and inspire people. And so we wanted to make sure we carried on that by starting the foundation in 2016. And so in that regard, we have 5 different initiatives. And one is the Peter Tosh Museum, which we actually opened up in 2015 in Kingston, Jamaica, where the world now can go and learn about him and his contribution to music. He was one of the foundational members of the Wailers, which is Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer. And so there's that. And then we also have the Legalize It initiative, where we partner with, um, we're advocacy partners of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. And so we work together to really do that work to bring minorities into the cannabis space, as well as just educational workshops and informational platform to really help our community and those that have been impacted by the war on drugs. Um, then we also have the Can't Blame the Youth Initiative, and that is really the opportunity that allows us to bridge that gap to the next generation. My father's music was around 40 years ago, and so we understand the power of music and how it can inspire many people, and it still continues to inspire people. So through that initiative, we do workshops with young people, and have them connect with the music and the message, to kind of have that wisdom that you spoke about earlier. And then we have Equal Rights Initiative, which is really just a global initiative to partnering with different organizations around the globe, with a very much love for the continent of Africa, because my father was definitely a Pan-Africanist, and recognize that, no matter where you come from on this globe, no matter what nationality you claim as a person, as a Black person, you're an African. We all come from the continent. So that's definitely a focus of ours as well. And then last but not least is the Justice for Joara initiative. And that's allows for us to kind of share my brother Joara's story, who's Peter's youngest son, with hopes to push towards cannabis legalization on a national level. And so we can definitely kind of transition into that if you'd like.
Yes, yeah, and I think that is really important to tell your brother's story, because with cannabis, the fact that we have people that are facing these criminal charges for something that is now legal, $20 billion industry. We currently have 40,000 people in prison for cannabis. I think it's important to bring light to these situations. So, I would love for you to just share and talk a bit more about your brother Jawar.
Definitely. So in 2013, Father's Day weekend, my brother Joara was arrested in New Jersey for cannabis possession. And he was actually held without a hearing for about 3 months, before kind of facing a judge and and prosecution happening. And so I remember it was September of 2013 when my mom and we all kind of showed up to the hearing to support him. And I remember him coming in with like shackles on his ankles and arms. And, I personally thought that this would be something that would just pass. My brother has never been involved with the criminal justice system before. He's a father of four. We are followers of Rastafari. And, I just said, although this is happening, this is just going to pass, it's can't be that serious. But then we heard the prosecution offer a 20-year plea. And that's when we knew that this was something that was a little bit more than just some sort of what they would consider a minor offense. And the judge then set the bail to $200,000. And it was mind-boggling. My brother is a musician. He's the most fun-loving guy that anyone would know. He ended up staying incarcerated for another 3 months, so the end of 2013. And fortunately, with a lot of support, he was able to kind of make bail. So then the next 3 years, he pretty much was going back and forth from Boston, which is where we're from, to New Jersey for kind of pre-motion hearings. And every time he went, they would tell him that, they would offer him a new plea deal. They'd offer him like 15 years and say, this is as low as it's going to get. You definitely need to take this. And you go back again, and it'll be 10 years. And you go back again, it was 5 years. And I remember, at that point, he was kind of worn out, and we were hearing so much information about, New Jersey and their criminal justice system. And, had come to learn that that particular county, Bergen County, really is a kind of a prison um, economy. You go in that neighborhood and you see a bail bondman on every corner. And my brother had talked about when he was incarcerated those first few months that he was locked up with a 17-year-old who couldn't make bail for having just about an ounce of weed, $150 bail. And, that's just, unwarranted. That's baby in my eyes. I'm an educator. But this is the system that exists and continues to exist. So um, by 2016, it was December, we had kind of become torn. We were torn between really fighting for what we believe in and recognizing the plan as a sacrament, recognizing that we didn't commit a crime, and fighting for that, but then also not wanting to be made an example of by the New Jersey judicial system, because that's the threats that we were hearing. If you take this to trial, they're going to give you the maximum sentencing. If you take this to trial, it's going to be even harsh. You could probably take the plea. And so in 2016 of December, that's exactly what my brother did. He was told that, although you're going to take a 5-year plea, you'll probably only serve like a year. And then you already did about 6 months. So it'll be, you'll have some time served there. So you'll probably get out, within a year's time and be all set. So he turned himself in January of 2017. After a month of being incarcerated, we had gotten a call, my mom and I. My mother actually calls me. She's frantic. She's crying, and she said, "There's a doctor on the phone. They're saying something about Joara." And that's when the doctor said, "We need to perform a life-saving medical procedure on your brother, Joara. He's been attacked by another inmate." And I authorized it at the time, and my mom and I immediately flew to Hackensack Medical Center where my brother was. And he was in the surgical ICU. And when we arrived, we were told that we don't have the right to see him, that, he is a ward of the state, and we'd have to check with the prison, with the jail, to see if we can actually be authorized to see him. And we called the jail, and they made a point to say, well, that, it's policy that he's not allowed visitation. And here my brother is fighting for his life, and, other families really probably have gone through similar things. And we were told no, but I felt like it was really my father's name, that kind of forced them to make an exception. So we went into the surgical ICU. My brother had tubes down his throat. He had a neck brace on. His face was bruised. Half of his dreadlocks were shaved off due to the surgery. Swollen, and he had an ankle, a handcuff on his ankle, and was surrounded by correctional officers. And here my brother was literally fighting for his life. And we turned to the hospital immediately and was just like, can we get this handcuff removed? Like, this can not possibly be helping his case and helping him and literally fight for his life. And they was like, that's up to the jail. The jail actually has hierarchy over the hospital. Um, and at that point, um, we had then found out that my brother was was pretty much incapacitated, unable to walk, talk, do anything for himself. It was a severe traumatic brain injury that he had suffered from the attack. And um, from that moment is when I knew that our lives were forever changed. After months of kind of fighting for his freedom, we actually were successful and was able to have him released from the prison due to his medical injuries. But he remained in the ICU for months, um, and then eventually came to Boston, where we were able to get him into some of one of Boston's best hospitals. And there he remained in the hospital for another almost 2 years, actually, 500 and something days. And um, we we knew that we wanted to continue to have him, fight for his vitality. Doctors were like, "Hey, this is not, the odds are against you, basically, and you could take another route." Which my brother was very spiritual, and we didn't want that to happen. So we took him home and cared for him for um, about a year before, unfortunately, he lost his um, he lost his battle, with it due to his injuries in July of 2020. Um, but I will say that, as a cannabis activist, we were told he would never do anything again. And after, starting to give him cannabis medicine, he had said my name for the first time. He was starting to gain some of his, vitality, but it was very difficult for him. And unfortunately, he kind of lost that battle during the pandemic. So I continue to kind of share his story because, we hear those that have been impacted by the war on drugs. We hear criminal, we hear convict, and all of these really technically could apply to my brother. But the reality is that, he's a human first, and it's important that we recognize how detrimental the war on drugs has been to families and how bad it has gotten. Um, and that's why we really need to have not only legalization, but the immediate release of all cannabis prisoners, And so we have partnered with the Last Prisoner Project to kind of push for that initiative, not only nationally, but really globally as well.
Yeah, that's a terrible story to hear. um, and I grew up in New Jersey myself, so I know this environment, this picture that you're painting to be true, right? Like the way just the system is. And it's a shame that for cannabis, right? Like something again that he lost his life. Um, you know, it's hard to even find the words to even say about something that is just so disturbing. When you think of what are some of the key things you think can be done, like in cannabis reform, to fix this, to make sure that not only not only changing laws, but what are some of the things that you can do to be activists to try to draw attention to these types of things to help?
I mean, it's really, really important that we all become activists in some ways, understanding when you say not only changing laws, but that's really the crutch of it, is
Mm-hmm.
being a part of that. And unfortunately, you know, um, we as minorities often don't have the privilege of time to be on the front lines, at the townhouse meetings, at the city meetings, to really lobby in the way that big money can just throw out, thousands, hundreds of $1,000s to just have somebody there every single time and testify. But it really takes, us to really show up, and have and be a part of that civic duty that allows us to get the justice that we deserve. I also would say that, spending your money where your values lie. In so many states, cannabis is becoming legal, and the faces of the industry, unfortunately, don't look like us. But if we are choosing to consume and support these businesses, making sure that we hold them accountable. You know, they they have to be doing their part to change change the face of the industry, as well as putting money back into the communities that have been impacted.
Right, and I think you said something really important earlier. I think we see far too often that when it comes to Black lives and the criminal system, they often dehumanize us. Um, you know, your brother, he was a brother, he was a father, he was a son. Like even being the son of a legendary entertainer, that still didn't stop him from getting this fate. All that when they looked at him, he was just a black man, and that's all they saw. Um, I think that really bringing this humanity to us is something that's so important. Like, what would you want people to know about your brother, right? Like, because he's not a convict, he's not a criminal. He was just a person using cannabis, something that was his culture, something that he came up with, and then he ends up in jail for it. Like, what would you tell people about your brother and his legacy, and
Oh,
what it
yeah.
means to you?
Thank you. That's a really good question. We grew up together in Boston, attended Boston public schools. He actually was the first to graduate from a small charter school called City on a Hill, and the only one at the time because all of the competencies that you had to go through. So he was extremely intelligent. He went on to Northeastern University, and he was a musician. His musical name is Tosh One, and he had the gift. I didn't get the singing gene, but he did. And growing up with him, I always told people that men and women would fall in love with my brother because he was someone that if he was in a room, you couldn't really compete with it. You didn't really want to because he was so entertaining and just so full of life. He had that real performer gene. And people that even weren't related to him, young children that weren't related to him called him Uncle Tosh, that's the type of kind of fun loving spirit that he's always had. Um, and so I think it's really important that, he wasn't someone kind of caught up in the system. And even if that is a whole nother story that goes with that, but he was this genuine, just full of life and full of love individual. And I think anyone, that got to know him, that would have had the opportunity to know him would fall in love with him in just a more of a genuine kind of way.
Hmm. Yeah. And so, um, what type of like in terms of like with now that you're doing this type of work, I know you're Last Prisoner, like you're doing work with Last Prisoner Project. I know you're also carrying on with the Peter Tosh Foundation. Are you actively like using the influence now of like the foundation to carry the message and everything as well?
Yeah, we are actually working on our a cannabis brand in the name and methods of Peter Tosh called Seen by Peter Tosh, and 10% of the proceeds does go back to the Peter Tosh Foundation, and really um, trying to be an exemplar of what a brand should look like, especially with the name like my dad, Peter Tosh. He um, wrote the iconic song "Legalize It," which is a platinum-selling album back in 1976, which was banned in Jamaica at the time. And people see him. If you Google him, you'll see he has a spliff in his mouth. No matter where he is on stage. I've heard stories of him lying up on a plane back in the, and so people would think that. because you see him with a spliff and he's always representing what he recognizes as his right, his human right, that it was easy for him. But in fact, he had faced police brutalization countless times for those beliefs. Um, and was made a target, in many places. So we wanted to make sure that every facet of the business really allows for us to kind of to help those that need support, and to represent not only the the activism part, but also the Rastafarian aspect of things. The term "scene" um, really is, a term that's used in patois that pretty much means like, "Do you understand?" And but also it's a double play on words where "seen by Peter Tosh" is that this industry that exists now is a vision that he had many years ago, and it started with his first solo album, Legalize It.
Hmm. Yeah, that's crazy to hear that that was banned in Jamaica. That's like a classic though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely, at a time when no one was
Right,
really.
right. That's like the first song you ever hear. Like, like
Exactly.
that should still be like people need to play that more, man. That should be like the anthem everywhere for real.
Definitely.
Hmm.
It is in my life, it's what drives us and fuels us, and continues to keep my eyes on the prize.
Hmm. And talk a little bit about Rastafari culture. I feel like a lot of people don't really know what that means.
Yeah. So Jamaica was colonized by the British in the 1700s, and the the way of life, we don't consider it a religion. It's really just a way of life. Was founded in the 1930s as an anti-colonialist movement. It was basically to fight against oppression. At that time, the rulers of Jamaica were all British. They were all European. And so the Rastafari culture was founded to because they recognized that their identity was not that of the oppressor. At that time, it was Western civilization with church, and it was a lot of church members that kind of became more conscious of their identity and their connection to Africa. And so Rastafarian culture really is a focus on connecting with more of the indigenous ways of our African ancestors, and taking from the earth what you can put back in, recognizing the plant as a sacrament, eating healthy. The term ital food uh, really comes from vital, which just vitality. So promoting life in the food that you eat, and promoting life in everything. So you hear that word ital, or even irie, is just this well-being and happiness in the spirit. And so Rastafari, just like any other kind of practice or religion, you have a spectrum of the way people practice it, but fundamentally, it's having a consciousness of the world around you, more than what you see on mainstream media, and then also understanding that we are one. The term "I and I" instead of you and I, it's I and I. It's recognizing that we're all brothers and sisters.
That's dope. That's dope. Um, and for you, it's a blessing to see that you're even, after what you went through with your brother, that you are still holding on. You're fighting, you're upholding not only your father's legacy but his legacy. What's next for you? What are some things that are important to Niambe?
Yeah, well, I've always been an educator. I actually taught in Boston Public Schools for 10 years prior to this, so this is just really a transition in doing the same thing. I taught math, but I really enjoyed just teaching life. And it was really prior to that, I was an engineer. And as an engineer, I was the only Black person, the only Black woman. And there was a disconnect for me. I always knew that I wanted to really help my fellow people, you know, and so I switched and taught in Boston schools, and that's where I felt more comfortable. You know, during the lunch break, I'd be showing documentaries, you know, just to kind of impart quick wisdom as, you know, as much as I could. And so now with this transition, the foundation allows me to continue to do that, and my father's legacy really allows me to do that. His music, he has songs like Equal Rights and Justice, you know, and in when we think about the time that we're living in right now, at the end of that song, he says, you know, Angolans fighting out for equal rights and justice. He says Palestine fighting out for equal rights and justice. And this was in 1978, you know, so, you know, I think that the music really allows for us to really, you know, it's a bridge to educate us. And, you know, he had a song called Mystic Man, and he talks about not eating any red, blue, green, drinking any red, blue, green soda, eating frankfurters, you know, all of the issues that kind of plague us today, being ignorance, but also just wellness. And, you know, his music has been always a way to educate and uplift us. So it's just a continuation for me, and I like having the platform to be able to do the same thing that that's always been true to me, you know.
And it's super dope that you're using your background as an educator. Like, that's one of my favorite things about just the cannabis industry in general. Like, there's so many opportunities for people to come in and use these skills that they have, to help uplift the industry. And, you know, the work that you're doing is super important. Again, like, you know, making sure that people that are, we talk about an industry that made $20 billion in the U.S. alone, and still people being arrested. Like, I know statistics, some places like over 20 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis. So, you know, what you're doing is important, and I definitely appreciate you, you know, telling your story. Again, I think these things that bring like the actual, you know, putting a face on these people, putting a name on these people, like, right? Like, it's not just a number.
Exactly.
You know, war on drugs isn't hypothetical. It's a real thing. Like, you talking about New Jersey, like, I've been growing up, I was pulled over like 60, some 70 times, like, in my life, like getting searched everyone. You feel lucky just to even make it out of something like that. So this is why it's super important for us to be legalizing it and telling these stories. And I definitely appreciate you coming through today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I second that, you know, and that's why I do what I do. My brother's story isn't easy to tell, you know, it's traumatic experience for my family. And telling it, I'm forced to relive that trauma. But I understand how important it is for people to understand and have that connection with people that have been impacted by the war on drugs. And it's very much alive, very much still prevalent. Cannabis has been used to kind of dehumanize us, as you said. From Trayvon Martin, it was thrown out in the media, to Fidel Castile was thrown out in the media, Breonna Taylor. We can go down the list, you know, that they used this to then justify their ultra violence against us. And so these are humans, you know, we're human, I'm human, and we have to start to kind of make a change. And even if all you can do is educate one other person, you know, or share, you know, the podcast, do that, because you never know who has the power to do more. So we all got to do our part.
Absolutely. And can you just let everyone know where they can find you, where they can learn more about the Peter Tosh Foundation, and all, and like really all the other work that you're doing across the board?
Yes, definitely. You know, I'm pretty much easy to find. I might be the only Niambe on the planet. When
I
you
thought I
Google,
was the only tie here, but there are a lot of other ones
there's,
now.
there's actually others, but I'm probably the only one that will come up on Google. So I'm pretty much easy to find, but you can definitely check out petertosh.com to learn more about the legacy of my dad, and then petertoshfoundation.org. And that's where you can learn about the foundation. And then at Peter Tosh on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then to kind of follow me personally. I'm Miss MS __ Tosh on Instagram, and then Niambe Mcintosh on Facebook. So, and then I'm on Twitter as well, but barely. So, but
No time to tweet, huh?
yeah, no time to tweet. But yeah, so we're definitely accessible, and we're always looking for different partners to kind of support the initiatives that we have on, and also I'm also looking to support other things that people have going on. So it takes a village to do this work.
Amen to that. Yeah, definitely want to make sure we keep in touch and collaborate and support you and, anything you do in the future. And again, like you said, I know it's painful just to even tell that story and walk through it. So I appreciate you, just having the serenity to, just to go through that. So, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Super dope catching up with you. We gotta do this again sometime. And world's opening back up. Y'all see you when I'm.
It is. Of course. Let me know.
Well, you take care. Everybody out there, thanks for rocking with us today. And man, I'm definitely about to bump that legalize it when we get off of this. That's about to be like my new ringtone. That's about to be the new. It's crazy enough. Like I feel like for being in this cannabis advocacy space, I would imagine that's a song you would hear more. But I'm about to. Oh, we about to make that. We about to turn that up.
That's what's up. That's what I love to hear. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, Niambe, you have a good one. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
And we are.